Hello everyone, this is Professor Robert Solis. Welcome to this video lesson. We're going to be talking about variables, part 1. How do we use variables in the C# language? So the first thing I'm going to have you do is to go ahead and click on New Project. And then of course we're going to select C#. Now I have Visual C++ as my default language, so that's why it appears here. So I need to go to Other Languages, select Visual C#, and then I'm going to select Windows Forms Application. So make sure that you select Visual C#, Windows Forms Application, and then over here for the name of our application, we're going to say this is going to be C#, and we'll call this Variables Part 1, like that. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And then it's going to bring up a form, and I want to make sure that the appropriate panels are available, such as Toolbox. Make sure that that's available. We're going to go ahead and click on that push pin, and that's way too wide. So let me go ahead and close this. I think I made it wider in a previous application. And I'm going to open up Properties. I'm going to click this push pin over here and make sure that this thing is also appropriately wide. Okay, that's a little bit too small in terms of the form, so I'm going to open this up just to make sure that I have a lot of screen real estate. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to have the user enter a number and a text box. I'm going to have some buttons down here to indicate addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and then I'm going to have another text box and a label down here. So the first thing that I'm going to have you do is to click on the Common Controls. In the Common Controls area, you'll see that you have a button. So let's drag and drop a button. Here's a label and also a text box. So these are the controls that I'll be using. If I need more controls, I can just simply drag and drop from here. I don't need the toolbox anymore, so I'm going to click this push pin to hide. I don't want to click the X button because that'll close the toolbox. I need the toolbox for later, so just simply hiding it by clicking this push pin is appropriate. So I'll just do that. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this text box and I'm going to move it into location. Now you'll notice that over here on the upper left hand corner you'll see these two guidelines that appear, one over here on the top, one over here on the side when I move this thing close. And those are just guidelines to help me indicate where the best position is for this particular text box. Now I know that I'm going to increase the font. To increase the font, there's a couple ways that I can do that. I can click over here with this plus symbol, and you'll notice over here it says size, and so I can double click and make that 14 points, say for example. So you'll notice that the height of the text box is increased. Another way that I can do this is if I click over here where it says font, you'll notice over here it has a button with the 3 dots. We call that the ellipsis. If I click this button, it's going to open up a dialog, and in this dialog I can change all kinds of stuff like the font name, the font style, the font size. Well, in this case, let's say that I want to make that 16 point, or strikeout or underline, or any of these options are available for you to use. Click OK, and as you can see what happens, it increases the height of the text box. Alright, well with that selected, let me move these guys out of the way. Remember, we're only single clicking or dragging and dropping. Don't double click. Later on we'll double click, but double clicking at this point right now is kind of a catastrophe. Well, I shouldn't say a catastrophe, it's just that you have to go through this process of erasing certain code if you erase an item here. We don't want to do that, so we're just being very careful. The single click, drag and drop, so forth and so on. So let me go ahead and open up the text box. I think that's about right. You know, I'll probably have to adjust this later, but just open it up so it's a little bit wider like this. All right, let me type some text in it just so I can see what it looks like, because I want the user to eventually type in text. So I'm going to go over here to the text property for this text box. Let me type in 3.14 just to see what that looks like. Okay, so it looks like the text is left aligned, and I don't want that. So I'm going to go over here to the text align property, and I'm going to select center. By the way, you'll probably want to select this guy over here, alphabetical. All of my projects, I like to have the alphabetical button clicked for all of the properties. By default, I think categorized is selected. Nothing wrong with this, it's just that I prefer the alphabetical. You'll locate text align, and we'll make sure that center is selected. And that way you can see that the text is going to be centered in the text box when the user enters it. So let me go ahead and double click on text, press backspace or delete on your keyboard, and that's going to get rid of the text that's in that text box. Okay, let me go ahead and open up or move this button. Let's see here. That looks like it's a good location right there. You see the little guidelines appear. And I'm thinking of creating 4 buttons. And so I'm just going to eyeball it and say that's approximately right. 1, 2, 3, and 4 we're going to be placing over here. And I'm going to replace that text with the plus symbol. So I'll type in plus in the text property for this button, but that's way too small. So let me go over here to the font property and let's double click on size. And what does 16 points look like? I think that's a little bit too small. How about 24 points? Okay, we're looking better. I think, well, we'll leave it at 24. Of course, you can adjust this to whatever size you want. This is the number of points for this particular font size. And again, of course, recall that I could also click the button over here to indicate the size of the font as well. Okay, so with that button selected, let me make sure that this thing is selected. And I'm going to Control C and then Control V as in Victor. That's copy and paste. I'm going to move this into position like that. Let me Control V as in Victor on my keyboard, move that into position. And once again, Control V as in Victor, move that into position. All right, now I can go ahead and take this text box and make the size so that it's exactly the same width as all these 4 buttons. And that looks pretty good. All right, I'm going to make this subtraction. So I'm going to go to the text property and type the minus symbol. Over here, we'll make that multiplication. Let me, again, double click on the text property. I'll make that a lowercase x. How does that look? Well, it looks pretty good. Most people see that as multiplication. Some people like the asterisk like this, and that represents multiplication. I don't care. I'll put an x, a lowercase x. That's fine with me. All right, in terms of division, I could go ahead and put a / like this in the text property, and a lot of people see that as division. Maybe you want the division symbol. If that's the case, if that's what you want, let me go ahead and open up the Edge browser. So let's see, Microsoft Edge. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to locate an ASCII value for the division symbol. So let's see here, division, ASCII symbol. Let's see here. All right, and let me just click one of these and see if I can find the division symbol. And if that's the case, I'll just simply copy and paste it. You want the ASCII version of this. I don't see anything here. Let me go to this next, go back, I should say, and go to the next website. Maybe I can find something there. Let's see here. How about this guy over here? It looks like I've clicked this before. Oh, look at that. I've got all kinds of symbols. Do you guys see a division symbol? Oh, right here. So let me click that. Let's see. Does it take me to another page? I guess it doesn't really help me out here. So let me go back and let's see if we can find another division symbol here. It looks like I've got ASCII symbols over here. Reference for what? Okay, I don't know. Let's see if we can find a division symbol here. Oh, I think we may be in good shape. So let's see here. Actually, let me do a quick find for division. And there it is. Division symbol. There it is. So let me see if I can copy that. I'll select it. Control C for copy. And now let me go back over here and let's see if I can Control V as in Victor. Sweet. Press enter and there's the division symbol. So that looks pretty good. I think we're going to keep that as is. Now let me take this text box. I'm going to Control C, Control V as in Victor. And I'll put this new text box right here. And then what I'd like to do is I'd like to place a line and then I'd like to place a label. Let me start with that bottom label first. You'll notice that this label is not resizable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here to the auto size property. Currently it's set to true. Let me double click this guy and I'll make that false. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this the same width as the text box above and approximately the same height. I'll put it right about here because my intention is to put a line in between these two. All right, so this is the label. I think the border style should be single. You'll notice that if I click on this drop down, it says none fixed single 3D. So I can select fixed single and you'll see the effect that it has on this label. Now, another option is to simply double click on border style or any of these properties. And as you can see what happens, it toggles between the various options. So I'm going to double click, make that fixed single, we are set. Now, I don't like the location of the text and I don't like the size. Well, first of all, let me change the location of the text. So where it says text align, I'm going to click this drop down and I'm going to select this guy over here. I guess it really doesn't matter if it's middle center or if it's top center. Well, maybe it does. In terms of style, I like middle center. That looks pretty good. Let me go ahead and change the font size. And so if I select size, and let's try 16 points. That looks pretty good. In fact, I think that was the same size as these text boxes. Yeah, it says 16, so I think I'll go ahead and just keep that at 16 as well. So for the font size, we'll say 16. That looks good. And then the next thing to do is to erase the text that's currently in here. We don't want that text. So what I'll do is I'll scroll down over here to the text property. Notice it says label 1, and sure enough, there's label 1 over here. Let me go ahead and double click this. I'll backspace, get rid of that, and now there's no more text. All right, the last thing to do is to place a line right here. Now, there really is no line. If you look over here in the toolbox, you don't see a line capability or drawing a line capability. So what I'll do is I'll just take this label and we'll do a little trick. I'm going to copy and paste this, and I'm going to make this so that it's all the way over here like this, all the way over here like this. I'm going to decrease the height, but you'll notice that I can only decrease it by so much. So what I'll do is I'll go over here to the size property for that label, and I'll change the height to 2 points. So I type in 2, and now you see that you have a nice line. I like that. So let me go ahead and carefully select just that line. I'm going to use the arrows on my keyboard to move this line up and down very slowly. That looks about right. Let me unselect it. I think the space in here is pretty even. We'll leave it like that. All right, the next thing to do then is to make sure that the width of the form is appropriate. And so as you can see, I'm changing it to something like this. Now I'm going to get rid of the minimize and the maximize button. So that's the maximize box and the minimize box rather. And of course you have to select the form. So with the form selected, I'll change maximize box to false. I'll change minimize box to false. Now you can see that those are gone. The next thing to do would be to type in over here my calculator. So what I'm going to do is, instead of having the form 1 text in the text property, I'm going to double click this, and then I'll type in my calculator. Enter. Okay, so now let's go ahead and give names to the various objects. And so over here, you'll notice that the text box is selected. And what I'm going to do is to open up the properties panel, which actually I already have the properties panel open, as you can see over here. All right, and then what we're going to do is we're going to give this a specific name. If I scroll back over here to the top, you'll notice that I have a name property. You can think of the name property as an identifier. For example, my identifier is Robert. So that's exactly what this is. The name is not the same thing as the text property. The text property describes or displays text in a particular object. The name property is the identifier. And so what we're going to use is the Hungarian notation, which means that every text box is abbreviated with a TXT. Now in this case, this is going to hold the first number, this is going to hold the second number, but when we're dealing with calculators, sometimes we call those operands. So we'll say this is TXT operand 1. You know what this is? It's just the first number. So I'm going to go ahead and press enter on the keyboard, and that's going to be TXT operand 1. Well, I might as well go ahead and name this guy, since I know that that's also going to be a TXT. That's an abbreviation for text. And we'll say this is operand 2. Press enter. All right, let's go ahead and give names to the various buttons. Now for buttons, we always have the Hungarian notation BTN. So we'll say BTN. This guy right here is responsible for addition, so I'll say addition. All right, this is a button as well, so I'm going to double click over here, type in BTN, because that's the Hungarian notation for button, and we'll type in subtraction. This is the multiplication button, so we'll say BTN multiplication. And then finally, this is the division button. So I'll say BTN division. All right, so I've taken care of these text boxes, these buttons, and then I finally have this label on the very bottom here. I'm going to type in LBL result for that button. Now, some of you are asking, hey, Professor Solis, how come you didn't give a name to this label right here? Well, programmatically, this label doesn't change, which is really that line right there. It doesn't change. It stays the same. It already has a name. If I select it, let me open this up just a little bit. And let me just select that label like that. It already has a name. It's called label 2. I'm just not going to give it a Hungarian notation label with the LBL because, again, I don't refer to this programmatically. It stays the same. Whereas this label down here, this guy right here, that is going to change. It's going to change from blank to displaying something, namely the arithmetic result of my calculator. So therefore, I better give it a name because I'm going to be addressing it later on in the program. All right, so my father is always saying measure twice, cut once, which means verification. So I'm going to make sure that I do that. My eyes are over here where it says name. So I want to make sure that this has the appropriate Hungarian notation label. So TXT operand 1, good. BTN addition, BTN subtraction, BTN multiplication, BTN division, TXT operand 2, and then finally LBL result. Okay, good. So all of our name properties have been assigned. Go ahead and click this guy over here where it says Save All. By the way, don't ever do this. Don't ever click File, Save As. That's going to get you into trouble. From this point onward, you're just simply going to click this guy over here where it says Save All. Or you could also go to File, Save All as well. There it is, Save All. Or Control-Shift, and then 5. That's okay too. All right, so now that we have finished our graphical user interface, we are now ready to type in code. And now you are ready to double click a particular button. So we're going to start off with this addition button at first. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and double click this addition button. And it takes me into the code area. I don't need the properties panel, so I'm going to minimize that by clicking this push pin. Notice that the cursor is blinking in this particular chunk of code area. This is the code that activates when I click the addition button. So when I'm running the program and when I click this, it'll go to this section right here. And by the way, you just saw that to go back to the design, I just simply click on this guy over here, and I'm looking at my design. When I double clicked this button, it took me into the code area, which is right here. Okay, so now I can start typing in code, and I want to show you what I want you to type for a majority of your programs, which are comments. And the following comments are declarations, get user input, calculation, or calculations perhaps, and then finally output. These are comments. They are not C# programming statements. They are kind of like post-it notes that you put on your monitor to remind you the next day when you come to work that this is what you're supposed to do. They don't have an effect on the C# program. They're meant as notes for you or for a future program to know what your intention or what you're going to be doing. Well, the first thing that I want you to think of is when you're looking at this form, what is it that the user is going to give to you, and what are you going to give back to the user? Well, first of all, the user is going to be giving me two numbers, right? They're going to have a number over here and a number over here. But remember, these are text boxes. Let me just remind you over here. These are text boxes. They are not number boxes. So when the user types in a number here, it's being received as a text. Same thing over here. Well, I can't do math on a text. I can only do math on a number. So what I've got to do first is I've got to create a couple of numbers so that I could bring in the text from these text boxes and put them into numbers. All right, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create double operand 1, double operand 2, and then double result. Now, a double is a real number. Now, real numbers, let me just put a comment over here. A double is a real number. There we go, real number. And for example, a real number is a number with a decimal point, like -3.1, 0.2, 4.3, say for example. Those are all examples of real numbers. They are numbers with a decimal point. We call those doubles. Okay? If these were whole numbers, we would call them integers. And integers are numbers that are just without a decimal point. They're whole numbers. But in this case, we're going to be using doubles. So doubles are numbers with a decimal point. That's it. And I've created 3 doubles. Operand 1 is going to get the text in here. We're going to have to convert that into a double and then place that into operand 1. This text that was entered by the user, I know they're entering a number, but it's being treated as text because this is a text box. So we're going to have to take that, convert that into a number, and put it into operand 2. Result is going to be the addition of these two because the user clicked the addition button. All right, so let's go over here to the Get User Input section, and we've got to get the text that was entered by the user here and here, and we've got to place it into these variables. So what I'm going to first do is type in operand 1. In fact, look at this. I didn't even type the entire word operand. It automatically comes up with this Microsoft IntelliSense, which I love. And I can just simply double click or hit tab. Let me hit tab and the whole thing is selected. Perfect. And then what I'm going to use is what's called the assignment operator. We'll talk about that in a moment. Capital C, convert, dot, to double. And so I have all kinds of different options over here. I want this guy right here. Now let me hit tab on the keyboard. I'm going to open parentheses. I'm going to type in txt. This is why I love the Hungarian notation, because all I have to do is type in txt, and you see that I have options. And in this case, I want that first text box option. So I'm going to double click on that. Dot te. Look at that text. That's the guy that I want right there. So I'm going to hit tab, and then I'm going to place a semicolon over there, and then press enter. I'm now going to do the same thing for operand 2. So we'll say operand 2. In fact, I don't even have to keep on typing. I can just simply select it. Let me double click this, and then convert dot to double parens txt. Perfect. Look at that. It comes up with operand 2 over here. I'm going to double click that. Don't forget .te. It's the text property that you want. And then I'm going to go ahead and place a semicolon right there. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the theory of what's going on here. You'll notice that this symbol right here, I know that you think of this as the equal symbol, but this is not a mathematical statement right here. This is an assignment statement. So imagine that this is a box over here. Operand 1 is really just a box. We are about to put something into the box. All right, so what happens is when you see this assignment operator, you read from right to left. So check this out. Let me translate this into English. Get the text from this particular text box, convert it into a real number or to a double, and assign it into this variable called operand 1. See, operand 1 is a container. That's why I said box. But it specifically contains a real number or a double, a number with a decimal point. So what we are doing is we're taking this text. And let me just go ahead and erase this and type in this. Don't do this. Right? We're taking that text 4 and converting it into the number 4. That's really what we're trying to do. So we're getting the text from the text box. We're going to convert this into a real number, and then we are going to assign it into operand 1. So when you see this single equals symbol, the way you want to think about this is you're going to read from right to left. This is not saying that operand 1 equals this. This is actually doing something. It's performing a command, namely taking the right-hand side and assigning it to the left-hand side. Okay, so that's how that works out. Now that we've obtained the text, whatever the user entered, and we've converted it into a number and placed it into operand 1, I can now do math on that. And so what I'm going to do is I can go over here to the calculations section and say that the result is going to be operand 1, this guy right here, let me double click, plus, and then let me type in operand 2, that's this guy right here. So I'll double click. And then I'm going to go ahead and put the semicolon right there. All right, so I've obtained the result, and by simply adding these two numbers, now let me go ahead and display that to the label. See, I want to put that right here on this bottom label right here, which, let's say that I forgot the name of that label. Oh no, what's the name of that label? Check this out, LBL. Beautiful. See, you know that all labels are LBL, all text boxes are TXT, all buttons are BTN. This is perfect. Now, I don't have to remember anything. I just know that by typing LBL, I'll see all the labels. I'll double click on that. Now, check this out. This is a newbie mistake for someone to do this. Uh-oh, you're not ready to do that yet. What you've got to do is .te, the text property. Let me double click. It's the text property that you want to assign the answer to. So we're going to use the assignment operator. Now, this is a mistake right here. Let me show you. I put in result, right? Now, I am trying to take this guy, which as you can see down here in the pop-up, this is a double. I'm trying to take this double and I'm trying to put it into the text property. You can't do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of this, and we're going to say convert dot to string. Look at that. To string comes up right here. Let me double click this, parentheses. Then I'm going to put in the result, result variable, and then I'm going to put a semicolon at the end. Let me explain this. You're already familiar with this convert word. We are able to convert to anything, really, to a double, to an integer, to a string. Well, in this case, this is a double, as you can see over here. This is a double. I can't put a double into text. I can only put text into text, but there is no such thing as a to text. What we have is to string. So I want you to think of string and text as synonyms. A text is a string is a text. There is a convert to string, which is really a convert to text. And so that allows me to take this number, to convert it, and then to place it into the text property of this label. And so that's how I'm able to place the number into that bottom label right there, which, as you'll recall, we called this LBL result. That's the name of that label. Okay, and that's it. So we're not finished with our program. Let me go ahead and click Save All, and I'm going to click Start, and let's see what happens so far. All right, so I'm going to put two numbers in the form. Let me go ahead and put the number 1 over here and the number 2 over here, and hit the plus symbol. Yep, 1 plus 2 is 3. How about 1.1 and 2.2? That's a real number. And as you can see, that's 3.3. So our plus symbol works. That's fantastic. We were able to do several things here. First of all, when I typed in the 1.1 over here in the Get User Input section, we're going to take that 1.1, which again is treating this as quote 1.1 close quote, because this is a text box. This is not a number box. There is no such thing as a number box. So I'm able to get the text from this text box, and now I convert it into a double, which means it's converting this into a real number. So it takes the quote 1.1 close quote and turns it just to a 1.1. Well, now that it's a 1.1, I assign it to the operand 1 variable, which I declared up here. And I'm going to do the same thing over here with operand 2. Well, now that I've got that, I can go ahead and perform an addition operation and assign that to the result variable. And then I'm going to take that result variable, convert that into a string, because this is a number, right? It's a double. I'm going to convert that result number into a string, which is the same thing as text, and assign it into the text property of this particular label, which is this guy down here. All right. So notice that the program is running. You are not able to do any editing while you're running. Let me just give you an indication here. So I'm going to go over here and start typing up. I can't do that. This thing comes up, says you can't do that. So let me go back over here. See, the program is running. And so I'm going to hit, I just simply hit Alt-Tab, by the way. So I hit Alt-Tab, and I'm going to close this program. When I close the program, now you see that we're no longer running. I can now perform additional editing on my code. This output panel appears. I usually just simply hit this close button. We don't need the output panel for right now. All right, so this is the chunk of code that performs this particular addition operation. Okay, at this point, we are ready to work on our next button. So I'm going to click the Design tab, and that's going to be the Subtraction button. So let me go ahead and double-click this. Notice how it takes me immediately to this particular chunk of code here, this function called btn subtraction underscore click. In other words, when this event occurs, namely the clicking of this particular button, we are going to execute this code. Now, the code that we're going to execute is very similar to the previous code. So I think what I'll do is I'll just copy and paste everything. I'm going to take this, I'm going to copy and paste all this over here. So that's Control C. And let me go over here and type in Control V as in Victor. Now I do have to make some adjustments. Namely, I need to make an adjustment over here with the calculation. That's not supposed to be addition. That's supposed to be subtraction. And everything else is the same. We are going to get the operands from the text boxes. We're going to perform an arithmetic operation, namely subtraction, and then we're going to display the result. So let's see what happens. Let me go ahead and click Start. And let me place two numbers here. Let me place a larger number like 5.1 and 1.1, say for example, or 1.1. And I'm going to click minus. The 4. Beautiful. How about something like this and something like that? Say, for example, what is that equal to? Okay, so the subtraction takes place. I could also enter whole numbers too, like 5 over here, and let's say 4 over here. Well, 5 minus 4 is 1. So you'll notice that I can perform real number subtraction or addition, or whole number subtraction or addition. Because really, a whole number like this, to promote it, all I have to do is just simply in the compiler, it's going to do this. It's going to change that to a 5.0 to make that a double. So doubles can become integers, but integers cannot become doubles. Your compiler will not promote, it will always demote, right? So it will always take this, say for example, and I'm sorry, I didn't say that correctly. It will take an integer and promote it to this. It will never take a double and demote it to that. And there's a future lesson that I have set available that will talk more about this idea of casting and promoting from integers to doubles, or you can even demote from doubles to integers. Let's leave that for a later conversation. All right, so I've finished the addition and the subtraction button. Now I'm going to go ahead and work on the multiplication button. So I'll just simply double click that. Here it is. I think I just copied the code, so I think it's still available in paste. Yep, it is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this guy over here to multiplication, and that's the asterisk. Sorry, that's the asterisk. That's going to multiply operand 1 times operand 2 and place it into result. And I might as well go ahead and take care of division, so I'm going to double click over here on the division symbol. Again, let me paste the previous code. For division, we're going to use the slash, specifically that forward slash right there. That's going to divide operand 1 divided by operand 2. Okay, let me go ahead and save my work. I'm going to run the program. And let's type in a couple numbers like 5, and let's place a 2 over here. Well, let's see. What is 5 plus 2? 7. Perfect. What is 5 minus 2? 3. Yep. 5 times 2 is 10. Excellent. 5 divided by 2 is 2.5. Perfect. So now you have all of these different operations that are available for you to use. Notice that when I clicked over here, or the cursor was blinking over here when I first started up the program, if I hit tab, it goes to this button, and then tab, it goes to this button, tab, tab, tab. I don't like this tab order. Let me change that. So let me go ahead and close the program. I'm going to go back over here to the design panel, and I'm going to open up the properties panel. Now, what I need to do is I need to make it so that the user, the cursor automatically blinks here at this text box. And then if I hit tab, it goes to this text box. I don't want any of the buttons to receive a tab stop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this text box, and I'm going to go over here to the properties panel, and you'll see it says tab stop. It's set to true. That's okay. For the tab index, 0. 0 is the first number for our tab index, which means that this thing is going to be blinking its cursor when I start the program. Let me prove it to you. If I hit start, notice how the cursor is blinking there? All right, so that's good. I don't want a tab stop for this button. So for tab stop, let me double click, false. Over here, tab stop, double click, false. Same thing for the multiplication button. And of course, same thing for the division button, false for all the tab stops. Now this text box down here, I do want there to be a tab stop. I want there to be a tab stop, so it's set to true. And for the tab index, I think this one over here was 0, so therefore I will set this one to 1. Press enter. Now let's see what happens. So the cursor should be blinking. Yep, there it is. It's blinking for this text box. Let me hit tab again. Perfect, it's blinking for this text box. Let me hit tab again, and we're going back to the first. That's exactly the behavior that I want. You don't have to worry about setting a tab stop for the label, because labels just simply display the data. The tab doesn't stop at that particular label. What if I don't want that? What if I do want it so that the tab goes from here, then here, 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 and then here? Well, I could set that up as well. If you wanted to, I could just simply say tab stop true. And so I'm basically undoing everything that I just did. That's okay. It's a good way for me to describe to you what's happening here. I'm changing all the tab stops to true. This will still go first, so that's why the tab index is 0. And then we'll make this tab index 1. So tab index 1, enter. We'll make this one tab index 2, enter. This will be tab index 3, enter. This is going to be tab index 4, enter. And then finally we have this text box down here, we're going to make that tab index 5. So now notice what happens when we start the program. The cursor is blinking at that first text box. Let me hit tab, 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 and go back to the first text box. So as you can see, you have total control. It depends on what you want to happen. You're just going to be affecting the tab stop and then give it a particular index. So starting from 0, as you can see this one over here, it starts at 0, and then you can go from there. All right, so let me run this program one more time before I conclude this. Man, I'm so proud of you guys. You did a great job. Let's go ahead and type any number that I want. Oh, let me type pi, 3.14. And I'm going to type in 3 over here, say, for example. Well, if I tab, 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 let me hit plus. There you go. I'm just going to press enter on the keyboard because this has received focus, and so it subtracts. Let me hit tab, and as you can see, the minus button has focus, so I can just press enter on my keyboard. Sure enough, 0.04 is the answer. 0.14, I should say. Let me hit tab. Now the multiplication button has focus. Again, I'm going to press enter on the keyboard, so 3 times 3.14 is this. And then I'm going to hit tab again. I'm on the division symbol. I press enter on my keyboard, and you can see the result of 3.14 divided by 3. And that's it. So this is Professor Robert Solis. I hope this video lesson was helpful. You guys have a good day. We'll see you next time.